There's always something. I don't know. I think I need to hire somebody to handle all this technical stuff. Yeah, it's another Erik Wait whiskey studies live. Let me pour myself a couple, and then we'll get into it. On my right is the Ardbeg Wee Beastie 5-year-old. If you're tuning in live, let me know what you're drinking. Have you ever noticed Ardbeg bottles generally don't have a pop and don't have much of a squeak? Just seems to be a characteristic of the bottles. Lagavulin, on the other hand, tend to be squeaky. In fact, almost all Diageo bottles tend to have a very similar squeaky character to them. So, before I get it going, next Saturday, I will be in Austin, Texas at the Bastards of Ball. If you happen to be in town, I fly in like early afternoon Friday, fly out on Sunday. There's a government furlough or shutdown going on. Hopefully, it's not going to affect the airlines. Hopefully, Congress does their thing and things get back on track. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. I'm just hoping. And also that the airlines now, essential workers, whatever, are supposed to keep working. It's not supposed to affect the FAA and all that, but you never know. But if you happen to be there on Friday night, I will probably be hanging out at the Fang and Feather at the Crowded Barrel Distillery, and using their glass tonight for the Ardbeg 5-year-old Wee Beastie. So if you're there and you're visiting, if you're gonna be there for the Bastards Ball, be sure to pop in, say hello. I would love to have a wee dram with you, and I may even buy you one. Mike Renke, how you doing, man? Thanks for tuning in. He has a Scotch Malt Whisky Society 13-year-old Bunnahabhain. Anything coming out of SMWS, is going to be good, cast strength and so forth. And I love me some Bunnahabhain. Probably now my favorite distillery on Islay. Hey, Whiskey Straight Owl over there in Ireland. So I will be in Scotland in April 2024, taking the Master of Scotch exam. I'll be over there for 2 weeks. My plan then is, since that'll be my 4th trip to Scotland, is my next big travel trip for whiskey would be to Ireland. And I love to meet up with you, Al, as well as Jim, the whiskey novice. So, but that'll be either later in 2024 or sometime in 2025. It's hard to get away that often. But hey, thanks for tuning in. So what I'm doing is, I was doing blind tastings earlier, doing some rethinking. I need to do more head-to-head, more comparisons, doing a whole lineup of peated whiskeys, trying to figure out what's what. Didn't really work. One, because of the amount of peat that gets carried over into the next one, next one, due to its saturation. Number 2 is you're not going to get a lineup of nothing but peated whiskeys. So why do it in blind tasting? And third, and I just found myself going sort of nose blind and palate blind with that much peat going on. It would be better to, if and when I pick up blind tasting again, is just do one. Also, stupid me, I think typically, if they're going to give you something from Islay, it's probably going to be peated. Now, tomorrow, my review of the Bruichladdich, Classic Laddie, will post, and this whole next week will be Bruichladdich. Of course, Bruichladdich is unpeated, Port Charlotte is heavily peated, and Octomore is super heavily peated. I'm going to do a video, a head-to-head between the Bruichladdich, and I'm getting ahead into Bruichladdich. I should be talking about these two, but Bruichladdich, Classic Laddie against the Aaron 10-year-old. Because when you're tasting the Bruichladdich neat, not if you were to do a blind, it doesn't scream Islay. It's very much an untypical Islay whiskey. I like it, but it's a non-typical Islay whiskey. So they could, as a ringer, throw it in there just see if you recognize it. But my current approach is recognize ABV, cask type, age, and then what is stereotypical for a region as well as a producer. Doing a Bruichladdich and expecting to come up with an Islay whiskey, it's not going to come onto my radar. It just at this point, just not. Maybe I need to be a better taste than that. But tasted blind Bruichladdich, my brain is we're actually going more lowlands in terms of what I think, what it seems like, or Aaron, which is why I'm going to do a head-to-head with Aaron. So tonight, two whiskeys that are fairly roughly in the ballpark of being comparable. What are we comparing? We're comparing whiskey type, peated and peated, rather than peated and non-peated. Cask type, proximity of ABV, close, and age. So something that are pretty close. Now, if I was doing this blind, I might want to, hey, do I notice the 40 versus the 46? Do I notice just a little bit of a sherry cask? And I would probably use a black Glencairn to do this. Do I notice just a hint of sherry? Things that are really intensely sherrified, your Glendronachs or Bunnahabhain 12 or whatever, are really obvious. You're just not going to miss that. So I'm trying to choose whiskeys that are somewhat comparable. I did the Port Charlotte 10 and the Laphroaig 10 last week. In some ways, they're comparable in terms of ABV, age, and peat. But what was obvious, if you watched last Sunday's live stream, what is obvious about that Port Charlotte 10, the most distinctive character to it is the the wine cask that I use. That's the most obvious that really, really, really makes it stand out. And it's a much gentler dram. The Laphroaig had been open for quite some time. There's less than half the bottle there. Probably been open for 2 years, give or take. And so things have become much more integrated. So in some ways, it didn't remind me of my stereotype of Laphroaig. But the other issue is I've been doing a lot of peated whiskeys. And if you're doing, week after week after week after week after week after week of peated whiskeys, you can become somewhat nose blind to the peat. So my thinking is ahead of the exam, 2 weeks out before the exam, no peat. Just stay away from the peat, so that'll be a much more recognizable going into it. All right. So it's not just a matter of nose and palate. There's a lot of strategy that goes in. There's a lot of detective going on. There is playing a little bit of Sherlock Holmes with the whiskeys, developing your sense memory so that you correlate what you're smelling and tasting to a particular distillery, but then also calibrating your palate to recognize ABV. And that would be mouthfeel, weight, a little bit, perhaps potentially an alcohol tingle that is distinct from a youth tingle, that edge you get from a young whiskey, or a spice tingle, which you can get from a cask, or you can get from the grain. So this is what I'm working on. So tonight, what we're doing is, and I'm bringing the notes up here. Hey, let me say hello to a few more personnel. Mike Meyer, thanks for tuning in. Christopher Moy, thanks for tuning in. Early Times Bottled and Bond. I've got a Lagavulin 16. Not impressed for $130 a bottle. Wisconsin price. It's okay, but I'd rather have a Talisker Distillers Edition or an Ardbeg Corvette. So, Judith, let me ask you a question. If I were to do a head-to-head, something comparable to a Lagavulin 16, what would you do? I thought Lafroig 16 versus Lagavulin 16, but the only thing they really have in common is the age, obviously, and that'd be about it. I mean, the cask, but they are nothing alike. They are nothing alike. The peat's so different. It would be really, really, really easy. But I was trying to come up with something potential to compare, and they don't look alike. Lagavulin is using, I think, a little E150 there. It's got the non-chill filtering going on. It's got the, excuse me, it's got the chill filtering going on there. So even though I don't think that's similar between the Lag 16, Lagavulin 16, and the Lafroig 16 is the 16 on the label. But anyway, currently sipping on E8. Man, a bunch of bourbon people tonight. Bunch of bourbon heads. Bunch of bourbon heads there tonight. All right, so let me bring up the notes. Excuse me. The notes, the notes. All right, here we go. So Lagavulin 8-year-old versus the Ardbeg 5-year-old. There is an Ardbeg 8-year-old, but it's not part of the core range, and I've not seen it here in the United States. If I wanted to spend more money than I want to, I could probably find one online and get one. But because I don't think it would show up on an exam, I'm just it's not worth my time. It's not part of the core range. Anyway, Lagavulin 8 is ex bourbon cask, Ardbeg ex bourbon cask, plus it's got a little bit of a sherry cask. Visually, and we'll look at the visuals in here in a second. It's not like you look at it, oh yeah, there's definitely some sherry cask. It's not obvious. And until I found get halfway into the bottle, I didn't even find on the nose or palate that it was really showing up. ABV 48 ABV versus 47.4 ABV, so very comparable in the alcohol by volume, and $60 versus $52. Of course, prices vary depending on where you're at. So I think this is a pretty good head to head, head to head. Guilty. Bourbon guy mostly. Yeah, I understand. I like bourbon. It's just when studying for a Scotch exam, I spend the whole time drinking bourbon. Um, in fact, once Lord willing, when I pass this exam next April, I will probably want to take a break from Scotch and do nothing but bourbon for a couple months. Just because I want to take a break um, from Scotch. Now I'm going to try this. I'm going to do something a little screwy. I've never done this before, and I'm doing this on the fly. Okay. I think I may have done this once before. I'm gonna try bringing up a second camera. No, I don't think this is gonna work. I don't know. I might. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna bring up a second camera. I'm sorry, I'm doing this on the fly. I'm gonna try to bring up a second camera and see if I can give you a close up. Better close up on the visuals rather than so. I got my other camera to work. There's a camera down here and there's a camera up there. I got my other camera to work. All right. Da-da-ba-doo. Okay. Now, now I get the audio. Announcing battle number 44. Mute. Sorry. I'm doing something crazy. How do you mute it? Mute it. Should be muted. Mute. Unmute. You know what? Screw it. It didn't work. Never mind. Anyway, I was gonna try to do something. All right, screw this. I wanted to bring in. I'd have to put this camera. Oh, I know what I'd. Sorry. If I put settings, if I put this on this, and this, okay. I put that one on this one. I'm gonna do this again. I know this is crazy. I shouldn't be doing this. We're gonna do this again. We're just screwing around. Da-da-da-da. Not forget it. All right. While we're here, screw it. I'll do it this way. Well, I got this mic going. All right. What I wanted to do is have two cameras up at the same time. Use one for zooming in on the glasses, and another one that would be in the back. What I'll do instead is just switch toggle between the two. I'll just toggle between the two. Sorry. All right. So Lagavulin on my left, Ardbeg on my right. Fairly comparable. They're sort of a straw gold in color. The Wee Beastie is just a hint. I'm talking just a hint darker, which may not be showing up on the camera. And I would say it's because of that touch of bing. It's that touch of sherry, but it's just a shade. But that tells you if you're doing this blind, you wouldn't go, oh, I think there's sherry in there. It looks more like oak extraction color than it does a wine influence color, a wine influence color. So, all right. So enough of that. I'm going to go back to the other camera. And magic, we are back. All right. Just a little experiment. Dram Yankee, hey man, it's been a long time. How you doing, man? I'm no longer living out there in the wine country. I'm down there in Half Moon Bay. We met up in the wine country a while back. All right. So if I'm up camera, it will be sufficient. But that camera is way back there. It's way back there. It wouldn't be close enough. All right. See, if I went like this, you wouldn't see it that well. All right. Just playing around, hanging. There you go. All right. Again, for those just tuning in, we are doing Lagavulin 8, Ardbeg 5, 3 years apart. Ardbeg 5 has just a little bit of sherry in it. ABV is real close, and only about $8 difference depending on where you're at. So visually, very similar, very, very, very similar. You know, if this was a real sherry cask, it would be, you could get more redness out of it. It would be just a darker color. All right, on the nose, the Lagavulin 8 has that new makey character to it. which is kind of like aspartame, powdered sugar, um, saccharin. It just smells youthful. There is a moderate amount of peat, smoke, a little bit of ashiness, sort of a melon character, but I think that melon is the youth. And I'm not a big fan of that character. Doesn't offend me. It's just not my thing. The Ardbeg 5-year-old. Now I know a lot of people don't like the Wee Beastie. I wasn't that big of a fan of it when I first opened it. I've come to like it more and more as I work through it. Price wise, it's now in the spot where the Ardbeg 10 was, and the Ardbeg 10 has moved up. Ardbeg 10 last I saw 65, $70. Short time ago, it was like 55. See, the Ardbeg, man, it used to have that new makey character to it when I first opened it, and that's gone away. The smoke has become much more integrated into the whiskey with age. There is, it's not necessarily noticeable as a sherry note, but it's becoming more barbecue in character, where this is a lot more ashier and just smoke. It smells youthful, but I think the sherry is really, I mean, just a touch. You'd be surprised how much just a little bit of something will have an effect. You can have, I know I talk about wine. You can have a Bordeaux wine or just a Bordeaux style blend. We use Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cab Franc, and just put like 2% of Petit Verdot, and poof, it completely changes it. It gives it a kind of a floral note. It brings the palate a little bit more towards, it fills in the palate a little bit more. If you buy a Cote de Rhone, which is predominantly Syrah, and then you put just a splash of Viognier, which is a very floral tropical white wine, it just lifts the nose on it. I'm talking just a little bit of Viognier goes a long way. In a similar fashion, if you predominantly using a bourbon cask and it's a young whiskey, you could really help it out by putting just a little bit of sherry cask in it. And I think that was a comment I made about, what the hell was it? Oh, yeah, the Ardbeg um, heavy vapors, the heavy vapors, which was quite the disappointment. Their purifier didn't work. Either they just decided not to use it or it stopped working. And so, what the heck is a purifier? Ardbeg has a distinctive character to their wash still, in which it's sort of like a reflux. So it's, I guess it's like it cycles some of the spirit back into it. So different ways in which you can increase contact with the copper. You could have um, longer, a longer still, taller still. You could make it like they call it a lamp. So it kind of goes narrow and then flares out like a lamp shape. Oh, you could put an OG, OGE, or OG, how you pronounce that? Kind of like the shape of this. It'd be shaped like this. You put an OG, and it basically anything you're doing that's increasing reflux. Ardbeg has a unique character to their still, a purifier, which essentially it's like recycling part of it and brings it back and brings it back in there. I think that is probably one of the key characteristics that gives it that Ardbeg character and distinguish it from Lefroy and Lagavulin.
And in fact, I was reading in a book by Lou Bryson, Master Class on Whiskey. If you haven't read that book, very, very, very good book. I need to drink some whiskey. In the book, Lou Bryson, Master Class of Whiskey, it's upstairs in my office upstairs. He actually mentions that still, and he was talking to Bill Lumsden, and Bill Lumsden, who was the director of Ardbeg, mentioned what would happen if they didn't have that. That it becomes a much more aggressive, in your face whiskey, which is basically what we saw with the heavy vapors. There's a little bit more of a spice character on the. Great knowledge, Eric. Keep going. Well, thank you very much. It's a real nice. I mean, it's very subtle. Nice spice character coming up in the back. Again, I think it's on that sherry note. It's just a hint. Just a hint. So it seems youthful. There's a lot more going on. It seems more complex. There's much of those green notes, lemon. There's much more of a lime character, a melon character, that aspartame. I just got bubble gum. Yeah. So here's another funny thing. And I know Daniel and Rex on the Whiskey Tribe, Whiskey Vault, on the Whiskey Vault, have mentioned here and there. I watch all the videos. Part of my routine, they used to be 5 days a week, now they're 3 days a week. Come home from work, pour yourself a dram, sit down in front of the TV, watch the latest episode. I still do this, but now they're only 3 days a week, and enjoy a wee dram. It's not going to be the same thing they're drinking, and watch it. It's become part of my routine, my chill out from work. And a number of different videos, they've mentioned how, depending how you hold the glass to your nose, and which nostril, your left nostril, your right nostril. Are you smelling from up here, down here, or smack dab in the middle? Are you angling it? Are you doing this? Are you shaking your glass? I'm not into that. And different times in the day, excuse me, my eyes itching. At different times of the day, you may have a different dominant nostril in the day, whether it's allergies or whatever else. But if you take a whiskey, what have you got in your hand now? Go left, go right, see if it changes. Go up on top. Typically, and I have the glass to the side, and I smell like that. If you watch the Whiskey Novice, and I actually made a comment on his recent video. He reviewed the Slave Leg Dark Selkie. It's a peated Irish whiskey. Good video. Check it out. Jim does this. He goes, "What you do you. If that's what works. Is that because of his beard? He doesn't want his beard getting into it. I don't know. Is it just a habit he developed? I'm curious about why he does it. I always bring the glass to my nose, change angles. I'll give it a little bit of a turn to put more whiskey on the side of the glass while I'm talking. But also in terms of a video, I try as much as possible to keep keep the eye contact. Although if I'm trying to think of something, my eyes tend to go up left or right. I'm trying to remember something. But depending on how you put the glass up to your nose, I was for a second there getting just a hint of a bubblegum note, which I've never gotten off of Lagavulin before. Alrighty. Taste and sensibility. Sipping on the GOT Lag 9 bottle kill. Actually, it's gone. Game of Thrones. I had to figure what that GOT was. All right. As we continue on, let's start our. I only have 5 questions today. And if you watch my shorts, no, not those shorts, my whiskey shorts on YouTube. I've been posting the initial video for the distillery on Sunday, shorts during the week. They're 1 minute. Basically, has a quick quiz question, and I introduce a bottle from the core range, and then we do the live on Saturday. Today's quiz is a repeat of the short. So if you've seen the short videos during the week, you should know all the answers. All right, I'm gonna take a wee sip. I know I've been doing this for half an hour now. A lot of blah 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 blah. Not a lot of tasting, but let me take a wee sip. We'll start with the Lagavulin. First sip of the evening. You always need something to clear off whatever was on your palate from before. So let me take another one. So there's the youthfulness on the nose and the character of that. A little bit of that aspartame powdered sugar character, that melon character. It almost would be if I don't think I have one available. They're in a box somewhere. They're in a box somewhere, or in a drawer somewhere. Taste some new make first. I don't think I have any available. Yeah, they're in the. When I moved this last time, I didn't break them out. I should get them out. Taste some new make first, and then taste these, and notice the difference of what a few years makes. Do I have them here? No, they're in a box. I'll get them out some other. I'm not going to go look. They're in a drawer or something like that. I'll have to get them out later. So you can sort of gauge in your brain new make to 5 years, new make to 8 years. I like the Lagavulin 8. It's been a while since I've had this. I like the Lagavulin 8 more on the palate than I do on the nose. It's not as new makey on the palate as it is on the nose. It's about right there to where it is. I think the peat has been able to, with some aeration, become much more integrated into it. But in addition to the nose of that new makey character on the palate, the alcohol has a sharpness to it. And peat whiskeys, I find, a young peat whiskey, the peat character can sort of take the bite off the new bite off a little bit. In fact, when Taylor and I were at Springbank and we got to taste new make, it was gorgeous. I mean, it was really, really, really good. And we're talking, cask strength, new make, no age, and it was beautiful. It was tasty. I mean, you would drink it just like that without any age to it, and it had no bite, and it was had a real nice mouthfeel to it. I mean, it was really, really something. So obviously they're doing, excuse me, they're doing something there, doing something right. All right, let's go into our quiz. We'll start with question number 1. I have allergies all the time. And so I'm always coughing and sneezing, especially when I'm talking. All right. What does the name Lagavulin mean? A, sunken rock. B, hollow of the broad bay. C, a small promontory. Or D, hollow of the mill. I haven't said so already. Next week, I will be at the Bachelor's Ball in Austin, Texas, and come and meet me if you happen to be there. I don't see any answers popping up. People say, what the heck is a promontory? A promontory is sort of like an extension of land sticking out into the ocean. Doug C says C. Probably because I had to explain what promontory means. All right, so the answer is hollow the mill. Hollow the mill. Ardbeg means a small promontory. Small promontory. If you go back and watch the video, there is this piece of land that sort of jets out on the north side of Ardbeg Distillery. If you look at where the warehouses are and where the water's at, and it extends out, that's called Ardbeg, and that's in Gaelic, and that's what Ardbeg means. All right, let's get into the Ardbeg 5-year-old. It's a little sweeter. The more you get into this, the more barbecue like it becomes. The further you get into the bottle, the more barbecue it becomes like. And I'm talking just a hint. And it's got to be just that touch of the sherry cask. And if they had put the heavy vapors into a sherry cask, let's say a year, it would have been a huge improvement. A huge, 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 huge improvement. Because it's a really, really, really new whiskey. In fact, I prefer the Ardbeg Wee Beastie, which is what was it, $52, over the heavy vapors, which is 150 to 200 bucks or whatever. So if you got yourself an Ardbeg Wee Beastie and you like it, in my personal opinion, you got something better than the heavy vapors. Mm. It's a little sweeter. It's a little bit more. There's a hint of a red fruit note on the back. It's a little more fruity on the back end. The Lagavulin has much more of a green fruit to it. Lemon, lime, and melon. Ardbeg. It's got a little bit of that Ardbeg classic lemon lime character to it, but then 3/4 of the way back on the mid in the mid palate into the finish, like the hint of that sherry note just shows up. Now it's not a sherry note like figs, dates, and raisins. It's not that. It's not that. In fact, if I didn't know that they use just a touch of sherry, I would think it was some other kind of red wine cask, Cabernet or whatever. I would not guess a sherry cask necessarily, but there is a red fruit note, maybe just a hint of a raisin that shows up on the back end. In terms of the mouth feel, so we did the visual, we did the nose, now we're working on the palate. Just talked about the flavors. Now I want to compare the mouth feel, the texture to it, the structure. Let's get on to the next question. When was Lagavulin Distillery founded? When was Lagavulin Distillery founded? A, 1779. By the way, all these years, well, except for one, are an age of a distillery on Islay. 1779, B, 1815, C, 1816, or D, 1819. When was Lagavulin Distillery founded? In what year was Lagavulin Distillery founded? By the way, there are two, if you're thinking of the Kildalton Trio, two distilleries have the same age, and the other one is just 1 year after that. Got an A, got a D, got a D, because I've lost track. I'm not sure which one you're this question or the last question. All right. And the answer is 1816. 1816. So Ardbeg, 1815. If you look at the Ardbeg Ardbeg Infinity, Ardbeg Perpetuum, and it has the infinity symbol on it, which is why infinity. The Ardbeg Perpetuum was released on the 200th anniversary of Ardbeg, to 2015, and so it founded in 1815. So Ardbeg 1815, Lafroig 1815. If you remember the years for those two are the same. Those are both 1815, and then Lagavulin is 1 year later. Bunnahabhain and Bruichladdich are both 1881. The first distillery, so the oldest on Islay, is 1779, and that is Bamor. Bamor was founded in 1779. So in terms of memorizing dates and stuff, is try to equate it with something. So I equate Lafroig and Ardbeg is both 1815, and Lagavulin 1 year later, and Bunnahabhain and Bruichladdich 1881, and then Bruichladdich was brought back to life in 2001. Kilchoman 3 years after Bruichladdich was brought back to life. Kilchoman was founded in 2004, and that you just have to kind of these things relate to each other and how you memorize these things. So texture wise, neither one of these are thin. I just got an ashy note on the Ardbeg 5 that I wasn't getting earlier. But that fruitiness is still showing up. Neither one of these feel thin. They're not necessarily like super heavy and weighty, but they have a moderate mouthfeel, a moderate feeling mouthfeel, a moderate amount of weight, comparable intensity of peat smoke, comparable length and finish. I am getting a little bit of a chocolate and mint character on the finish, but I'm not picking it up until I'm talking. So like after you swallow and you keep breathing, or in my case, talking, and you keep paying attention, what is showing up right now as I'm talking right now, is there's still something there. And I get a little bit of a chocolate note and just a hint of a mint character. Just a little bit of a minty character. I get that more mint character more in typically in Lafroig than I do in either of these two, but that heavy vapors, Ardbeg heavy vapors, it just had a ton of mint. And if you like that, that's fine, but I don't want that to be the dominant character of a whiskey. All right, let's get to the next question. Question number 3. Who founded Lagavulin Distillery? A. McDougall and Company. B. Donald and Alexander Johnston. C. John Johnston. Or D. David Simpson. This is probably the most difficult question tonight. Dustin, how you doing, man? He says, Perpetuum was great. If you ever wondered what Ardbeg 10 would be like if someone put it out, a cig in your glass. Yeah, I agree. It is very, 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 very ashy. I agree with that 110%. It's, in some sense, a little bit more like a Lafroig in a sense. But yeah, I didn't love it. In fact, you can still find Perpetuum, and it's not that expensive. You would think it'd be in a collector's item and it'd be really expensive, but it's not because it wasn't really a well-loved whiskey, and it just it just wasn't all that. So you still find them around. Jason Coates says C, and the answer is John Johnston. Mr. Coates is correct. John Johnston. Now, I made this look. So there is a David. See, you had a David Simpson, and you had a Alexander Johnston, and you had a John Johnston. Easy to get those confused. I'm gonna guess that Dustin is not a big fan of the Ardbeg 5-Wee Beastie. Best what? Okay, Dustin, if you want to jump on, I can send you the link if you're feeling up to it. I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna guess you're not the biggest fan of Ardbeg 5-year-old and the Lagavulin or the Lagavulin. I'm curious as what you would think of the Lagavulin 8. John Johnston. No comment. No comment. If you want to jump on, let me know. I'll drop the link in there. In fact, tell you what, just for giggles, I'll do this. Copy. Oh, you haven't had the 5-year. Okay. I'll hop on. Okay, cool. Well, Dustin's getting set up. Let's go into question number 4. What is Lagavulin Distillery's water source? A. Loch Ugadal. B. Lochen Sholem. C. The River Lagan. Or D. The Kilbride Stream. What is Lagavulin's water source? What is Lagavulin's water source? Is it Loch Ugadal, Lochen Sholem? If I pronounced that correctly. C. The River Lagan. Or D. Kilbride Stream. For work, he says C, 100%. All right, and then Doug says C. Let's see what is correct. All right, and the answer is Lochen Sholem. River. He was saying River Lagan. I am going to just double check, make sure I didn't screw up. Lagavulin water source. Just to double check, make sure I didn't make a mistake. Nope. Solemn locks or lock and solemn, same thing. According to Wikipedia, it's lock and solemn or solemn locks. Solemn locks. So sorry. Dustin, give me a thumbs up or a middle finger when you're ready.
How you doing, buddy?
Hey, man.
I don't have any 8, but I got this the 9-year, so I'll join you.
Okay, Game of Thrones. Okay. Oh, Doug C jumping in for the hell of it. Okay, what the hell? Hey, your camera's blocked. Hold on. He needs to fix his camera, and then I'd have to switch to the third one. His camera's all blurry. Anyway, so you've not had the and now you dropped off, so his camera wasn't working. All right, so you've not had the Wee Beastie 5?
No, I haven't. When it first came out, it cost as much or more than the 10-year. I just couldn't quite figure out what they were trying to do with that.
So when it came out here, the Ardbeg 10 was 55. They were probably, you might want to try to introduce something that might put in a lower price. The Wee Beastie was probably 35, I think.
Oh, wow, that's a good. That's cheap.
But then everything shifted just a little bit, so that so the 5 moved into the 10, and everything moved bumped just a little bit.
Yeah, I want to say they both were like 55 here when it came out, and I would see the 10 on sale for like 45 all the time. Right. So like I would literally go in a store and I'd see the 10 for less than the 5, and I'm like, okay.
So if you guys are familiar with Top Shelf Dustin, you do a lot of whiskeys that other people typically aren't going to find. They might not have, but they should be aware of. They should be aware of to know what's out there, and is it worth buying? Is it any good? As well as just for yourself, not beyond just enjoyment. Hey, I mean, shit, who isn't going to enjoy older whiskeys, right? But I would say I would probably would like to a better calibration of my palate with older whiskeys in order to better understand where the trajectory is going to keep going, because at some point it does go on the decline. We had a 32-year-old Springbank when we were at the distillery.
Ooh.
And while it was good, it was past its prime.
I can see that.
It had gone beyond. Again, it was still, I wouldn't kick it out of my bed, but it was beyond where it had peaked years ago, and you could go, okay, we're not going to bottle this, although people would still shell out a gazillion dollars for it.
Well, sometimes you can take those. I'm guessing if the oak character got too high at that point.
Well, no, it was just it wasn't being overly oaked. It was just very mellow, very quiet. It was just kind of like tired. It was tired. It was like me around 8:00 at night. Ready to go to bed.
Well, yeah. Also, you got to remember, 32 years ago, from my understanding, is Springbank was kind of having, let's just say, some casking issues.
Yeah.
They were using a lot of refill. They just didn't have a lot of good casks, and we're kind of just now in the last few years starting to see the 25, and we'll probably see it coming up in the 30 year that they just released. They're just now starting to get some little bit more cask influenced bottles coming out. Even the 21s, if you went back a couple of years, were very kind of boring. So they've
improved their sourcing and using better casks, so the older whiskeys are going to be better than what they used to be.
Well, at least they'll be bolder. I mean, I don't like to use the word better. I mean, that's a little more subjective, but they're definitely going to be they're going to have more oomph to them.
Right.
But you could take that 32 and probably add it to a blend of some older Springbanks and probably get some really nice character from it.
But in terms of whiskeys that you typically, I would say my sweet spot for whiskeys for Scotch isn't that 12 to 15.
Okay.
And for bourbons, anything past 12, I'm generalizing, tends to be a little too oaky for me. For bourbons, so that 12 seems to be a sweet spot for me for bourbons. But I can take 5 to 12 depending on where it's from and so forth. I've had plenty of really older scotches for me become much more refined, much more delicate. If you put a little bit of water in them, they seem a little bit more fragile. A little bit more fragile to them
sometimes,
but they are a rarity for me. I don't have a lot of that many older whiskeys like that.
Yeah, for me, I do find I like older whiskeys, but they're more hit and miss, and there's more risk with your dollars.
So, what about the Lagavulin 8-year-old? You've had this one?
I do not enjoy that one at all. It's very spirity. I don't think they used particularly like active bourbon casks either. And it just I don't know, it just kind of has this phenol note that it kind of sour bitterness that I just really don't I don't enjoy it. And so I never liked that one. But it's not necessarily aged, because this, stupid gimmicky Game of Thrones crap. I got this because it was basically they were giving it away. It was like $30. But
Yeah, that's a whole funny story.
but this is actually really delicious. Like, and I think it's because they've got a nice cask that they used for at least part of this that they then blended, and it just gives it nice little bit of oak character. Nothing crazy, but I think it's really good.
It's a little more first fill, I think, bourbon, or what is it?
You know, I wouldn't be shocked. This is just kind of going off pure guess and conjecture, but I wouldn't be shocked if they used recharred casks in this one and it gave it a really nice,
Oh, okay.
little bit of a wood smoke note.
Okay.
Again, I could be wrong, but I think
I didn't buy any Game of Thrones bottles, and the only one I tasted was actually in Indianapolis at Sean's house, Scotch for Dummies.
Yep.
At his house, and it was the best of them all, the White Walker.
Oh God. So when I moved out of my last apartment, I left my White Walker in the freezer. I didn't even want to touch the bottle again. I was like,
Yeah, I just I guess the hype itself just turned me off, and I'm like, and a lot of whiskey tubers thinking, I don't know, maybe thinking something fun, maybe thinking they're going to be collectibles, maybe they think they're going to get more of an audience because there's so much hype. Hey, get a lot more views, it'll boost my channel, whatever the thinking was, and that's fine. Everybody can do whatever they want, but and of course I'm an Ardbeg fan, so I have a fine line where I go, okay, too much bullshit, too much hype. If the quality isn't meeting the hype, then it's like a woman with too much makeup and she's just covering up what it ain't all that. I'd prefer someone with a really great personality who's fun to hang out with.
yeah. I don't want to, not to sound sexist, but anytime I see a woman under 30 with tons of makeup, my first reaction is, why?
Yeah.
You have the look everyone with makeup is trying to get, which is young skin.
Yeah. Be a great person, a nice person, someone who's a joy to be around, someone with a great person, someone who's a great conversationalist. Believe it or not, when sitting at dinner, you got to have somebody you can talk to.
What's really nice is a woman who can fall asleep on your couch if you have white pillows and not have to replace the pillows.
Hey, someone comes in, hey, did you have a clown sleeping or the wife of a televangelist?
What did you have over here last night? And you're like, dude, my friend came over. His 16-year-old daughter was sleeping on the couch.
Tammy Faye Baker was over here. She was.
Oh, who was the girl from? Did you ever watch the Drew Carey show?
No, I don't think so.
Well, there was a character that sat in the desk like across from him. Her name was Mimi.
Oh yeah, and she had like enormous eyelashes. I think. Yeah.
Total over the top.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I've seen from clips. I never watched the show itself, but I've seen clips. Yeah, Mimi. Anyway. So anyway, guys have their own ways of overdoing it. Whatever. I don't want to. You never know who's going to tune in. There are certain people I've met who wear way too much cologne, and you feel like, dude, I hope that guy doesn't smoke because that dude will just burst into flames. I mean,
yeah. Well, like I had a. It wasn't my boss. It was my boss's boss, and I would know when he got in the office because I could smell him coming. And I think somebody finally had like a heart-to-heart with him and was like, "Hey, man, bruh," because he stopped doing it altogether.
Yeah. Well, the worst one, when I wasn't just offended or whatever, I was pissed. So, in people I know in the wine industry, I was asked to be on a panel for a particular winery. They were changing their business model. They were okay wines, but they were much more of a wedding venue because it's a beautiful property. And so what's typical, if your emphasis is on tchotchkes that you sell and amusement park things and being a wedding venue, the quality of the wine just tends to go down. So if you walk into a tasting room and there's a lot of crap that they have for sale that has nothing to do with wine, okay, the wine's not going to go that good. Just letting you know. So they've said, you know what? We are going to improve our wines. We're going to stop doing weddings altogether. and we're going to focus on our wine. So then they go, okay, let's bring in a team to help us analyze our wines, and we're going to improve the profile. So that's what I was brought in for. So the distiller, is a friend of mine, and so he had his dad in on the panel, and his dad's sitting next to me, and he had like a shirt and a jacket. He takes the jacket off, puts it over his back of his chair, and the cologne he had on. I'm like, oh my god, dude. I'm like, your son's the manager. Didn't he say, hey, Dad? I don't know how am I supposed to be smelling the wines if all I smell is your whatever now, I don't know, cologne, Old Spice or something. Whatever the hell he was wearing. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, have you ever been into like a bar that has like a really nice whiskey selection and they allow smoking in it? Obviously not in California, but elsewhere.
No, if they're smoking there, I can't go in there, but I get the picture.
Yeah, I had a friend. He brought me to this bar, and I mean, it had some of the cheapest pours you'd ever seen. It was more bourbons, but I mean, we're talking like some really hard to get bourbons for 2-ounce pours for $20. I mean, like stuff you usually pay $50, $100 for. Anyway,
I got one more quiz question. Let's bring this last one up. One more quiz question up, and then I only have 5 questions tonight. The last one is, this is going to be easy. Who is the current owner of Lagavulin Distillery? A, Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton, also known as LVMH. B, Beam Suntory. C, Remy Cointreau. Or D, Diageo. Who is the current owner of Lagavulin Distillery? And we'll play a little background music.
Also, everyone who misses this gets booted.
There you go. What could the answer be? All right, let's get back to the answer. That's a StreamYard tune. They have featured now. Now you can they have these little,
that's a good one.
Yeah, you can. They have rock. They have a bunch of different styles, and it'll just go on a constant loop. And then you can also upload tunes, put in the back as well. So let's get to the answer, and then we're done with the quiz. And the answer is Diageo. Diageo. Yeah, just from that pop of that cork, from that sound alone, you should know it's Diageo. Okay. What two distilleries does Beam Suntory own on Islay?
Ooh.
They own 2 distilleries in Islay. Who does Beam Suntory own?
Bowmore?
Yes, there's one. We discussed this last week. You didn't tune in.
I was not on last week.
Lefroy.
Oh, really? I don't think I knew that.
Now, so, and this is what was funny from last week. Lefroy owns, Beam Suntory, obviously they own Beam. They also own Maker's Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Maker's Mark is 70% of, I'm holding back belches, 70% of Lefroy's casks come from our bourbon casks, and they come from Maker's Mark.
Well, that makes sense. The Warehouse C was exclusively first fill Maker's Mark barrels, so that makes perfect sense.
So if you can, whatever it is you got to do to remember it. If you can remember, Beam Suntory owns Maker's Mark, and Maker's Mark is providing for Lefroy, and that's because they also own Lefroy. Then you got that one down. Now Remy Cointreau, they had Remy Cointreau out there. Who does Remy own now?
On Islay?
On Islay, yeah. And it's the reason why this very well-known person left.
Oh, Unhagen.
And nope. And he went over to Ireland.
I'm forgetting a distillery right now, clearly, because I'm like
Glady.
Bruichladdich.
Thank you. I knew I was forgetting a distillery. I'm like, there is a distillery name. I can't come up to.
Yeah, Bruichladdich. They now own Bruichladdich, and Mark Rainier. Mark Rainier. They weren't like really like, screw you guys, I'm going to Ireland. But that's more or less what he did. They got bought out.
No. That's what I was actually trying to think of when I said Bunahop, and I was like, it's the B one, Bruna. And I'm like, wait, no.
It went over. So Mark Rainier, yeah. Of course, I have no life. This is what I do 7 days a week.
This is why I will never be certified, because I am the worst at memorization of facts.
Well, it's a matter of how do you keep this crap in your head as you get older and older and older. You got to come up with things that are associated. So now I'm associating this distillery with this distillery. The Feurich and Ardbeg, 1815. 1 year later, Lagavulin. That's easier than just remembering them individually. But if you can remember them together. So what is
mad at this stuff young? So
what would be the youngest Scotch that you actually? I like this.
I mean, I've had a 3-year-old Octomore I really enjoyed. So I mean, it can be done at young ages.
Yeah, that's Octomore.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, my guess is Octomore does really, really, really narrow cuts, which I think kind of removes some of that bite that youthful whiskey had. In general, when you're not talking single cask or specialty, I generally gravitate towards 12 and up. I really don't tend to go younger, other than maybe an Ardbeg 10 or something.
Yeah, and Pete up the wazoo. I mean, I said grace covers a multitude of sins. A beard covers a multitude of chins.
Yeah, I need to get mine a little longer to cover this little.
Covers your gullet, your chin, and a lot of peat will cover you in a whiskey. Peat will cover you in a whiskey.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think like what the youngest whiskey I've had that wasn't peated that I really enjoyed. Because I mean, even Springbank 10's got a little bit of peat in it that really, I think, makes it better. And I'm trying to think not a single barrel where like that's a little bit cheating.
I'm looking for a bottle. Oh, here we go.
And I feel like everything I'm thinking about is a 10-year-old or is a 12-year-old.
So here's a whiskey that's young. It's not available here in the United States, but I like it. I picked this up in Scotland. It's
Mooch or whatever, Mooch.
Mock or Mooch or whatever the hell you want to call it. And I thought I'd do a video on it, but Kalila isn't on the list that could be on an exam.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Well, they add them and we subtract them, and they already have plenty of Islay distillery. So they go, okay, how much of a core range is Kalila? And how big of a core range? I'm guessing how big of a core range that they've got. Why have it on there?
I guess 3 bottles. That, the 12 and the 25. Like that's it, isn't it?
So this is the. Well, and they had that. Is it a 12 or 15-year-old non-peated that comes out every once in a while?
That's a Diageo special release. That's not core.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, as I said, it comes out every once in a while.
And it's the Coors edition. Never had it.
It's really young. If you Google it online, there are people who have complaints about it. Why would I buy that when I can get the 12-year-old? Blah 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 blah. It's a young peated whiskey, and it's hard to describe. But it's not new makey the way the lag is, and it had just something really different going on there that I just really, really like. I think the peat was done right so that the smoke comes across much more barbecue and not ashy.
I can't say that I've had a Kalila I didn't enjoy. They're a distillery that often doesn't wow, but never seems to miss. They're just so consistent.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they get used in blends so often, is because it's a very malleable malt, because it's kind of non-descriptive. I actually think that might be part of why they took it off the exam. Was Kalila can taste like Lefroy or Lagavulin to a little degree when you blend it, but it's based on.
I can see that it's a little more chameleon-like and able to adapt and become much more like some of its neighbors.
Yeah.
Particularly if you were an independent bottler and you were to take Kalila and then take another cask, a pre-peated cask, and then you could hide the identity of Kalila by putting it into an Ardbeg cask or an ex-Lafroy cask or a sherry cask, whatever, and just really change the profile of it. You would know, okay, this is part of Isla, but you would never be able to figure out what the identity is of it and where it came from.
Yeah, no, it's or like John Glazier really likes to blend it with Klein Leash, and I mean, those were made for each other. That is just a good combo.
That'd be interesting. So after I finish these exams, in terms of like things I'd like to try and do, that definitely wouldn't get a lot more subscribers necessarily or views, whatever, is experimenting with home blending. And now that you say that, is to play around with the Klein Leash 14-year-old and a Kalila and do incremental blending with it to see what you come up with and find something you like to do. Play. Hey, let's pretend we're John Glazier today and just play around with it.
Oh, it would be amazing if you could get Nancy Fraley on here and the two of you like actually make your kind of talk through making some like Scotch blends, because we all know Nancy's the nose and the blender,
right,
the bourbons. But how cool would that be to have her talking about doing some Scotch blending as just sort of change pace?
So she lives not too far away, although the traffic. Oh my God! So if you're on a map, she's not that far away, but. So there's a mountain or hill that separates me from the bay because I'm here along the ocean.
Okay.
And today I had to go up over on the other side. On the way back, I guess a tree fell over. There's one road that comes up over the hill down to Half Moon Bay. A tree fell over, and this place is very agricultural. So there's pumpkin farms, and there's Christmas trees. You drive by a Christmas tree farm there. So people are out here. Hey, let's go to the beach and get our pumpkins. And then a tree fell over. It took me an hour and a half to get over the hill.
Oh man, really?
Yeah. So I just like So if I had known ahead of time, I could have headed north and come up through Pacifica and take the drive down the coast. But whatever. Anyway, that's the biggest challenge trying to get people to come over here is are they willing to make the trek.
So what are you finding to be the most challenging part of or whiskeys, or what are your biggest challenges on the tasting stuff as you're going through this?
One right now, because I've been doing so much, doing a lot of Islas recently, I'm becoming desensitized to peat and being aware of that. So that now if I go pick up an Ardbeg, if I were to go taste Ardbeg 10 right now, it does. Okay, here's my memory. Here's my memory. You ask yourself, what does Uigeadail taste like? And you get this image in your head of what it tastes like. Now grab Uigeadail and what you're actually tasting. Do these two match? And no, they don't. Why? Because I'm becoming desensitized to peat, and what I have in my mind is when I've tasted Uigeadail or Ardbeg 10 or whatever on its own, not after my palate had become sort of desensitized to peat. So you almost kind of have to mix it up. If you find yourself becoming desensitized to peat, you just got to take a break from it and start doing something else. Yeah. Do a Bruichladdich Classic Laddie, which my video will post tomorrow on it. That's one thing. Two, I'm most nervous about is actual blind tasting, the psychological aspect to it. So there's fast brain, slow brain. There's a video on it when I was so I went to Mash Som, and I mentioned this very thing. My brain wants to go, oh, I think it's this. It immediately jump to a conclusion what you think it is. And now you start smelling and tasting what you think it is, not what it actually is.
Yeah.
Because you picked up a couple clues and your brain's already jumped to the conclusion. And so what it is particularly when you're nervous, when you're driving down the freeway and someone cuts you off on the freeway, you have to respond like this. You're going to brake, swerve, what? If you're playing chess, you got plenty of time to respond. So your decision making, you're using a different part of your brain in decision making and making a quick decision because oh shit, versus I think he's gonna try to play the Mongolian maneuver or whatever. Now this. Oh, this is the Queen's Gambit maneuver, or whatever. These names they got in chess. So it's just a different part of your brain. And so the issue is how I taste here now versus when I'm there and stressed from the exam, and I've just flown 11 hours to get there. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't got jet lag. How well did I sleep? And shit, man, I'm spending a shit ton of money to get there. Everything's on. Yeah. And everything, it's the psychological aspect to it more than anything else. It's October, November, December, January, February. We're 6 months out, and this is all I think about.
Oh, I'm sure, man. It's got to be that's intense. Yeah, like for me, I think I'm pretty good with like the peated stuff as far as like which company I think it's from. But man, I would be terrified about some of the Space Sides and Highlands because they to me all taste the same. Like it really comes down to like whose sherry cask is being used here. Like you put like a Glengoyne and a Glenmorangie flight of like 12 and 15-year-old whiskeys, I'm in trouble.
So there are 24 producers. You got to figure out just the core range. If you get what are their cask types, what are the tip ABVs, if you memorize those. So for example, I'll throw one out without even tasting it. Moderate sherry, moderate ABV, or low ABV, 40 to 43, fairly thin, just very lightly peated. What is it?
My first thought was HP 12, but that's 46, I think. Lightly peated, moderate sherry, really low,
and not super spicy.
The lightly peated is what's throwing me for a loop here. And then the 40 to 43%, I mean, it's not Macallan, obviously. It's not a Tomatin. It's not a Glengoyne.
Okay, so let's walk this through. It's peated. So regionally, where do you think it's from?
It's lightly peated. My first thought is it's not Islay. But I mean, I could be just overthinking this.
So what are your options?
I mean, I'm thinking like you're looking at islands, or you're looking at one of the Highlands that uses a little bit of peat,
like Talisker.
Talisker. Oh, Talisker.
Okay.
Moderately peated.
But does Talisker use a lot of? Okay, this is a matter of.
But Talisker doesn't really do sherry much.
Bingo. Okay, check that one out.
Yep.
Okay, now getting to know Edrington period and how they and their sherry cask and their sherry and their they're a lot more intensely sherry. They're a lot more spicy. In fact, they even rate it on the freaking. So if it's a very mild spice, not all that, and then mildly peated, it's probably a distillery you don't drink. Bowmore.
I wouldn't consider Bowmore lightly peated. I mean, that's
compare it. Yeah, it's
compared to Ardbeg. I would say it's
the ppm. So the ppm level. So ppm level for Lefroy, Ardbeg, Lagavulin, or 40 to 55. Bowmore is 20 to 30.
See, to me, that's moderate peat.
Okay. Moderate light, whatever you want to lightly peated or moderate.
Lightly peated to me is like Highland Park, like 5 or 10, or Talent, maybe even.
So Highland Park's peat level is about the same as Bowmore.
Really?
But,
okay.
Oh yeah. Except there's a distinctive because all of the peated barley for Highland Park is from Orkney.
Mm-hmm.
All their non-peated barley comes from Simpsons, so they source all the non-peated barley. Highland Park, the spice character on Highland Park is much more intense than anything from Bowmore. In fact, in terms of a sherry cask, that for maybe for Bunnahabhain, it's more spicy, particularly on the finish than Bowmore.
Yeah, honestly, I don't own a Bowmore, so that's it makes it a little difficult for me.
I was gonna say a lot of people who aren't big Bamor fans.
And the funny thing is, the only Bowmore I've actually had in like the last couple of years was a cast strength sherry bomb. Their Devil's Cask or something from like 4 or 5 years ago. So I don't think I can sherry with them either.
The other thing is you have to think again. So you said before, you're not necessarily, you're more like after what you want to drink, not what you have to drink for an exam. So you're not going to be focusing a lot on these core range whiskeys and what the mass consumer drinks, because is what you want to drink. And so Bowmore is going to be off your radar.
Yeah. One of the toughest things I ever did was I was a judge for a consumer whiskey like competition. And so we went through about 30 whiskeys that day. And they had us do a range where we went through the Glenmorangie and Glengoyne, the 12 through 18, the entire line. And they were all one after the other. And I looked at one of the other judges and I was like, I feel like I'm just drinking the same whiskey over and over again. And I kind of was.
What was his response?
He was like, I know. He was like, it just seemed like we just had the same ones for like a bunch of stretch there. And I was like, it's weird. And so I asked the guy who did the whole thing, like the next, that night we were having a few drinks with the guy who did the event. And I was like, man, what happened there? I was like, the same whiskey. And he goes, oh, yeah. He goes, we probably should have mixed up the Glenmorangie and Glengoyne. And I was like, was that? He goes, yeah, you went through every one they had. And I was like, man, I'll tell you what, by the end there, I just basically just started giving the same score. I was like, man, there's just not enough difference.
Well, so Glenmorangie, they got the 10, which is first and second fill bourbon. You got the 12, which is La Santa.
Well, yeah,
their core range has changed a little bit.
They moved the ages around a bit, but yeah, you got the Lestu or whatever. Then you got the Port, which now is a 14, used to be a 12.
Yeah, Quinta Rubin, and then
you have the white
Dior,
wine,
Nectar Dior, which I have over here. I've been doing now, and it's a non-age statement. It's a non-age statement.
That used to be a 12,
and it's bourbon cask and obviously Sauternes cask.
Yeah. But then Glengoyne is a mix of bourbon and sherry, a 12, a 15, and 18.
So
Glenmorangie is also bourbon and sherry.
Right. So if you had a pretty heavily peated whiskey and it's sherry cask, okay, that eliminates and its core range. Lefroy just went out the window.
Well, no, they got the 10-year sherry oak. That's core now.
I don't think it's core. I don't think it'd be an oddball. I don't think it's core range.
Oh, I thought that was a new staple for me.
It could be. But that pretty much it already narrows things down. Okay, and then Ardbeg, you have Ugadal.
Yeah, the cask strength.
And then you have Loch Gorm from Kilholman. From Bruichladdich.
Oh, Sanegg could be in there too, though. From
what?
Sanegg from Kilholman is also.
Oh, yes.
It's 85% sherry.
Yes. So if you got a sherry cask and heavily peated, you're down to 3 bottles. If you think about it,
if it's heavy sherry and it's high proof, otherwise Lagavulin 16 is technically sherry.
Brunehaven has their Monia and there's all those, but those aren't core range. So
unless again, Lagavulin 16 can come off pretty sherry in certain batches.
Yes. Okay. For the sake of argument, let's say it was sherry, just for shits and giggles. So then what are you going to do? Then you got to go, okay, what's the ABV?
Yeah.
Then you got to go, okay, but compare ABV. And the ABV, obviously Ugadal, just a little bit higher. Just a little bit higher than the Lagavulin. So then you're going to go, it could be this or this. And then you're going to go, okay, well, yeah, this is way too high. Now, the challenge is you've got 8 whiskeys, and I think they do them in 2 hours, I think.
That's a lot of time, though, at least. That's not too terrible.
I'd have to double check on that. I could be wrong on that. So in the Advanced Somm and Master Somm, you have 6 wines. You got 4 minutes per wine. And with the WSET diploma, in 2 hours, I had 11 wines in 2 hours, but everything was written. So whereas the quartermaster Malays, everything's verbal in front of a panel. WSET, everything was written. So I'm writing notes, which actually slows you down.
Mm-hmm.
But the advantage is when you're looking at what you're writing, it's almost as if the paper is talking to you rather than off the top of your head. There's an advantage there. So even if you could in a quartermaster Malay exam, if you could write and just read what you wrote, it's like doing math on paper versus doing math on top of your head.
Sometimes just when you write a certain word, that triggers your brain to like you see it and you did it,
right.
and it triggers like, oh, metallic.
Yeah.
So and so's that, or like cooling. Oh, that's Ardbeg.
Oh yeah. So that cooling of Ardbeg, that's a sensation you get?
Ardbeg, like when the finish on Ardbeg, it's like it dips in temperature. With Lagavulin, it goes up.
I hadn't noticed that.
For me, at least.
No, I'm gonna try it. Hold on.
Can't comment on the wee beastie, but
I wonder if that's because Lagavulin typically. Oh, this has a little maybe. It's not as prone to that minty character, and it's that minty character. You don't like you have a like a mint or mint gum or like that the menthol or a throat lozenge. That's that cooling effect when you breathe in across that mint character that gives you that cooling effect. I wonder if that's
it could be for sure. Because I mean, I get like a lemon lime sensation too with Ardbeg often. Which to me might just trigger it. Oh, I'm having a nice cold Sprite on a hot day or something. Right. Not that I'm a big Sprite drinker, but it.
And I get that from Lefroy as well. I get that.
Lefroy, I definitely get the lemon lime, but I don't get the cooling as often. Lefroy's more of like Lefroy's very mellow in that like sensation. It's very consistent.
It's earthier as well. Well, ashier, earthier.
Did you see David's comment there? He'd prefer Ardbeg new make to the 5.
I don't know if I've ever tasted Ardbeg new make. I don't know. I've never had it before. I might have. I don't remember.
Yeah, I've noticed there's a group of people who seem to like the 5, and there is a group of people who seem to adamantly hate it.
I think it's like Bart, or with Scotch Test Dummies. He's one who likes young Pete, and I think if that's what you're like, you're gonna like that. I think that's a matter of a subjective preference, which is fine. I don't care.
Yeah, it surprises me how much I dislike the Lagavulin 8, though, and I think the 12 is one of the best whiskeys on the planet, or it used to be before they started effing with it.
Right. I have the 12. I have shit. I actually have 2 of them. I think they're the same year. 57.7 says this is the 200, this says 1816 to 2016 200th anniversary, and that's the same one. So I think these are both the same year.
Oh, so you got the 16s, okay.
Yeah, and I got 2 of them. $135. I don't know what they're going for these days.
About 150-ish, I think, is what the current ones go for. The problem is, so last year's release was, so historically they've always been 100% refilled bourbon.
Yeah.
Last year's, they decided to use virgin oak in it.
Oh.
Which, no shocker, a lot of people found that to be a little unpleasant.
Right.
And this year's is going to be released with Don Julio tequila finishing.
Yeah.
That was my reaction too. I just started shaking my head. And what now? I have a bottle of it coming to me? Yes, I do.
So, that's nice. So here's
now the plus side though, Eric, was in the UK, we don't get them here in the States, but in the UK, some of the Diageo special releases come out in 20 CL bottles. So I have a 20 CL of that coming to me because it was $40.
So they had that weird in the 2009
Scotch Whisky Association regulations that it has to maintain the character of whiskey. And I'm like, what does that mean? It's not defined. That it's supposed to still taste whiskey and not taste like something else. And there's two casks that I think tend to, my personal opinion, start to derail that definition. One is tequila, and I think rum can do that very easily, to where you feel like you're just drinking. Someone took rum and whiskey and put them together. It's so rum characteristic. So I think
I haven't had that experience. What if you had that was that intense in the rum?
Well, Ardbeg drum, I think heads in that direction.
That just tasted to me like unaged Ardbeg. It was just like that, like the rum didn't add a flavor so much as it felt like they were not putting flavoring in it.
And tequila, I mean, I've only. It's not that I don't like them or don't like them. It's just like that's tequila. That's tequila. There we go. It's mezcal rather than regular tequila. And I like this. I mean, it's I called it my guilty pleasure. It's like $26. It's I actually kind of liked it, but I go, yeah, this is for people who like tequila. And I bought a bottle of tequila. They do them side by side. And it basically seems like, yeah, I took this and I poured it into.
Yeah, I've actually got a Lagavulin that was finished in mezcal casks, and that's a fun whiskey because you get like a different kind of smoke from the mezcal, and then you do get a little bit of that like a fresh, earthy agave, whatever it is, kind of stuff going on.
So with the 12-year-old, and I can't psychologically I don't want to try to, if you have an opponent in a game, okay, I know he typically plays this way. He typically uses these maneuvers. He's trying to think, what's the person's strategy? I had a friend who would blind me on wines. We worked together, and we would talk about the wines we had over the weekend. Then he started bringing in samples of wine that he had over the weekend. He'd give it to me on a Monday, and I'd take it home that night, and I would write notes on it, and then I'd tell him what the wine was. And I'd spot on a lot, and he would be like totally blown away that I was, nailing his wines against me. But after a while, it became no, I know him. I know what he drinks. I know what he doesn't like to drink, and so based on I'm getting from him, and so at that point, there's not much of a point in blind tasting anymore since I know who's giving it to him.
Yeah, I'd give you a sample, and you'd be like, yeah, it was totally Springbank. And I'm like, how did you get it? That would taste nothing like Springbank. And you're like, you've only given me Springbank samples. What do you think?
Yeah. So when I'm running, so I don't want to try to base my determination of what I think the whiskey is based on what I think they'll give us and not give us. Other than it has to be among the 24. I don't want to play that game. But if there's a core range whiskey that varies from year to year, say like Lagavulin 11, the Nick Offerman, they change him every year. It's not the same thing every year. So why would you put a Nick Offerman in a test? Since this year they put into some beer cask or something like that. Not that it's a good or bad whiskey. It's just that how in the hell can they expect you to be aware of and be able to identify every version of Nick Offerman 11-year-old that's out there, right?
Yeah, that'd be brutal.
And so with the 12-year with the 12-year-old cask strength, other than we don't care if you necessarily get that pin, but are you recognizing the cask strength? Are you getting the ABV right and the region right? And that's really want to see. Can you really hone your palate till you can at least identify that? Okay, then you could get then not expecting you to get the bottle right, just that you got the ABV right. They could do that in an exam that you're getting close enough.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it depends, I guess, on how they're grading. I mean, if they want you to literally tell them what whiskey you just had, I mean, oof.
Well, I think if they're doing it, so knowing the people who are in it and knowing the background of the founders have a wine sommelier background.
Okay.
It's a matter of points. You get so many points for getting the cask right, so many points for getting the ABV right, so many points for getting the age right, so many points for getting the producer right. So if let's say there's five different points you could get off of one bottle. Okay, you got the ABV, you got the cask right, you got the producer right, you got the age right, then you're getting more and more points. But if you only got the ABV right and that's the only thing you get right, well, then you don't get as many points. So you're gonna score it like that.
So if they're doing age, I mean, that means no NASs.
So that would be it's not that not that they wouldn't have a non-age statement, because they do. It's just that just wouldn't be something they're looking for.
Okay, they just want to ask that question with that one.
Or it just wouldn't be a factor in for that particular. So for example, the Glenfarclas 105 has been on an exam.
Okay.
That's an NAS, but obviously that's 60% ABV and sherry cask and non-peated.
Yeah.
So that pretty much okay. Whoa, it's a hefty whiskey, and I think it's one of the most neglected whiskeys by whiskey tubers. I think it's a fantastic whiskey for quality price ratio, big, and it's just a big.
I haven't had that one.
Oh, yeah, it's probably $70-$80. 60,
Not here.
80.
Last time I saw them, they were over 100.
Really? Well,
Prices have gone up.
Oh, yeah, last week versus 6 months ago.
Maybe I could be wrong. I thought it was over 100 here now.
The prices have been going nuts.
I want to cry every time I see the Glenfarclas 25 year. I used to think, well, it's not a great whiskey, but if you want to know what old whiskey tastes like, it's a great buy. Just to learn what 25-year-old whiskey, like the different impact.
I paid $6.29 a gallon for freaking gasoline this week. What am I talking about? I was like, I was dropping F-bombs. I'm like, what the hell, man?
I don't drive enough where gas would have to hit like $20 a gallon to impact me. I drive so little.
Oh, well, I drive a truck and I drive a lot.
I drive a 4-cylinder sporty car, and I don't drive to work. So,
well, my Bugatti doesn't get very good gas mileage either.
Mine's always in the shop. I just thought it wasn't worth the effort.
Yeah. So, trying the cask strength.
That's a good whiskey.
12-year-old. 57.7 ABV.
I just had a friend of mine find me one of these on the shelf still.
Believe it or not, the 16-year-old has more complexity and layers to it that only is going to come with age. You can't get around that.
Also got more cask types. It's bourbon and sherry.
Right. But this is Wade versus this versus that. I'm probably going to go with the 12 over the 16-year-old.
The 12 is just so balanced, and the cask strength just makes it creamy, easy drinking. It's just a pleasure to drink that whiskey.
Really, really, really nice.
I have definitely noticed, though, the 16s vary a lot in the amount of sherry notes I get, from almost none to almost cherry bomb level.
So what are you mostly doing or drinking now? I mean, obviously, I have an agenda. I have a list. Everything's predetermined and mapped out between here and April.
Yeah, I mean, I'm buying a lot more bourbon lately, I've noticed. I feel like there's just a lot of interesting stuff with bourbon going on lately. Like, actually, I just picked this up. So, Copper and King. But the interesting thing here, and it's all shiny there, but finished in an apple brandy barrel.
Huh.
And so this is a blend from 3 different Kentucky distilleries, 5 10 and 15-year-old bourbon, and it was like $60.
Okay.
It's nice. The apple brandy wasn't overdone. They didn't like hide the bourbon.
Right.
It's interesting, and $60. Whereas scotches have gotten just crazy expensive. So I pretty much just buy all the Springbank when it comes out that I can afford, and then I just kind of leave everything else like can't afford anything else.
Is that an actual distiller or independent bottler where they're sourcing?
So Copper and King is actually the people who make the casks. So the apple brandy cask, that's coming from them.
Oh,
So they're actually they're a cooperage brand, and they're now getting involved with bourbon. So they're sourcing it to use their cask to finish.
okay. So what? I mean, in terms of what's your makeup in terms of your how much of your scotch, how much is bourbon, what percentages, and how much you?
In terms of money spent, I certainly spend a lot more money on scotch, but I probably these days I'm buying 60% bourbon, 40% scotch.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe even 70, but again, it also just depends on when Springbank shows up, because when new Springbank bottles show up.
I would be curious to see the producer list for the Master of Bourbon.
I'm not letting these sit on the shelves.
Was that the 12 cast strength?
That's the new 12 that just came out. It's incredible.
Shut up.
The last year's was good whiskey. That is incredible whiskey,
dude. That's like $450 here.
I bought one for $1.40 and I bought the other for $1.50.
Okay, what did you have to do to get it?
One store I asked nicely. The other store, I sent them an email pointing out that they had the wrong picture of their 30-year Springbank, that they were showing the picture from the prior year's release, which I'm sure the person's response was, "Who the hell would even notice that?"
Yeah, really.
No, the color's off. And then and then I mentioned, hey, when will the 12 cast strength show up? And he goes, "We'll be putting that in the case on Thursday." So I was the first person there on Thursday.
Nice. Yeah, I got to taste it at the Washback Bar at Springbank Distillery. Really liked it. And man, I was just like, can't get it. Then there's a shop here, Artisan Wine Depot in Mountain View, that has it. It's $450. I'm like, no, homie, don't play that game. I mean, if I did buy it, it's because you know what? I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna open it my next birthday. It would be a special occasion thing.
That price is ridiculous. I would have considered going a little higher in price.
That's just nuts. A blend of straight bourbons. Don't you only have to call it a blend of XYZ if it's from different states?
I mean, you would just call it a straight bourbon if it was different states. You wouldn't have to say the word blend at all.
Okay.
And this one, they went out of their way to talk about the fact that it was a blend of 3 different Kentucky bourbons, because they wanted to market that it was Kentucky, not Indiana, basically.
So David says 43% actually suits a 16-year-old, in my opinion. It's one of those that if it was cast strength, why not go? It doesn't have to go cast strength, just 46. I would probably end up taking it down to 40 to 46 anyway. Yeah.
I had a 48%. I forget what it was called. It was like it wasn't a distiller's edition, but it was a one-off Springbank not Springbank, Lagavulin, that was 16. And I tell you what, 48% is the magic percentage. 48 is just magical, I think.
The Lafroig 16-year-old is at 48%. Really like that. I've been hyping that one a lot, probably to my demise, because I can't get anywhere. Well, it's because you talk too much about it, stupid.
Yeah, Glengoyne, a 25-year-old, it blows my mind. They put all of their other bottles at 43%.
In fact, I have a whiskey review I'm going to be doing shortly, and I'm probably going to put on my thumbnail, "Do not buy this whiskey." And people are like, "Oh, really?" I'm not even saying what it is. And people are like, "Oh, really? Why not?" And then they're going to find out because it's freaking awesome. I want to still be able to buy it.
Oh man, yeah. Every time I complain about certain things getting harder to get or prices going up, people are like, "You know what might have helped? If Yeah, and I hyped it up. I'm like, dude, we got 3,000 subs. What are we doing? And then like we said, oh, this was really good. Hey, we got it here. And then we go looking for another bottle, and they'd be like, man, some dude came in here and just cleared the shelf. And I'm like, about a week. When was it? Oh, about a week ago. Yep, 3 days after our video went up. Cool.
We're frozen.
You are freezing here periodically, Eric.
You are frozen totally.
Me? I'm watching on YouTube. You're frozen, and I'm still moving.
On mine, you're frozen. Hell, man.
Chat. Who's frozen? My frozen is
no. My whole browser is frozen.
Oh, well, that's the issue.
What the hell? It just went to. So StreamYard will keep going. I'm going to close it and come right back. Hold on. Nope. Okay, now it's back. All right, we're back.
You look good.
That was weird. Just before I was about to close it and then try to come back. That was weird. I'm guessing. Okay. Oh, something I should have mentioned. Yeah. So something I should have mentioned. Remember, I mentioned earlier. It took an hour and a half to come over the hill because I'd gone over to the bay.
Yeah.
Well, because the tree had come down, and then about an hour before I went live, I had a power outage. So I was a little concerned tonight. We could have a power outage, and this whole thing would be a wash. So last year we had crazy storms. I had a tree fall down north of my house. If it had fallen this direction, it had taken out my house. We had a tree fall down on the other side. If it had fallen this way, it had taken out all the power lines, flooding, you name it. So I've got on my list. I need to go buy generators. I need to buy uninterrupted power supply, UPS. I need to get 2 UPSs, get a generator so I can maintain power for at least 8 hours while I'm home and, whatever. Anyway, because I have a feeling this is going to be another one of those seasons. It's going to get nuts here.
Well, just make sure, you call up Bobby over there from Bad Axe Bourbon, and that way he can come over and fix your issues when the trees come down.
So we work at the same place. I head west to the ocean. He heads east to the Central Valley. So we're coming from 2 different directions. So if he were to come to my house, he would do double the distance to get back home. In fact, I saw him. I saw him just the other day at work. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. In fact, I actually went over to talk to him. So I was working. It's called an emergency action plan. I was working on an emergency action plan, and I want to make sure. Hey, do you guys know where our building's at? Do you know how to get into our building? Do you know? Just to make sure. But he actually, he's actually. So there's two parts of the firehouse. There's those. So Moffett Field. People don't know I work for NASA. It's an ex-military base. There's housing. There's research labs. There's a school there's Carnegie Mellon University is there. So there's all kind of buildings. So there's a flight line. So there's a fire department that deals with the flight line, and there's a fire department that deals with everything else, the houses. So he works crash. He does, and he has worked the other side, but he doesn't work unless he has to fill in. He doesn't work the normal. So the guys if we had a fire or someone had a heart attack, it wouldn't be Bobby going over to give me CPR.
I could see some people making that phone call. Bobby's in very good shape.
Yeah, dude, he's got man. He will crush your freaking fingers, man. So they have a gym. Their building is very. I'm gonna say it's very posh. They have it's very nice lounge, big lounge chairs. Lazy boys, television. Very nice kitchen, very nice washing machine, and a gym. They got their own gym working at. But when he shakes your hand, man, it's like, look at my hand. Anyway,
yeah, Bobby's one of those guys that I just can't picture ever actually being seated.
Yeah, he's got a lot of energy to him. He's great.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy I can't imagine. Like you told me, he has to send an email, and he's the guy typing with his butt still in the air because he doesn't want to sit down.
yeah. He's probably younger than I am. But yeah, he's in good shape. So anyhow, hey, I'm gonna wrap it up. I feel dinner's calling me. So tomorrow, Brook Laddie, Classic Laddie, my review as well as the profile of Brook Laddie Distillery. And on Wednesday, it'll be Brook Laddie, Classic Laddie versus the Aaron 10-year-old. Aaron 10-year-old. Yeah. So see how that comes out. And then we're moving on to Boonhaven. And the week after that will be Boonhaven, and I'll be reviewing a whiskey that I brought back from the distillery. Everybody be pissed off because they're not gonna be able to get it, but it's a superb. It's the Moynia. It's the fish ale Moynia PX cask. PX cask.
What age? Because they did 2 this year, I believe.
Where'd it go?
Well, was it the $3,000 one, or was the one humans can afford?
2004. This is number 642 of 1,270 bottles. This is it.
It's like an 18-year-old or something. No, 2004. That means like like 18, 17, 18, 19.
Anyway, very, very nice. Funny, a lot of pigs cast in the fish ale. Kalila was a pig's cast, and Bamor was also a PX cast for the fish ale. I don't know if it was planned but just a lot of PX casts in the fish ales this year. So, anyhow, if you haven't already, like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. And Dustin, if you want to put your channel thing in the comment section there, people can check out your channel.
Sure, might as well.
Cut and paste it in there.
Yep. All right. Yep. If anybody's not subscribed, look, Jeffrey Waxon. Please, come on over. We might have a video up tomorrow. My video editor hasn't done his editing yet, so I don't know.
So check out his channel. And thanks for coming on, man. And hang in there. We'll talk just a little bit afterwards. And until next time, Salanja.